Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And Frank from Tested.
And we are here today in Frank's new shop to learn about, well, casting stuff. We showed people how to make some molds before, some simple dump molds, and we've done a little bit of casting, but there's a whole art to it.
There's a whole bunch of different ways you can cast parts. Like when I used to work at McFarlane Toys, we would injection cast most of the things, where we'd make the molds so that they're kind of closed, but just have a little port. You put a syringe on there, and you pressure cast, like you put the material in with pressure from a syringe, and you put it in a pressure tank to get rid of all the bubbles.
And then when we did like a dump mold for previous projects, it was just an open cast, just poured in material, and we got a whole solid piece, whether it was a lightsaber or a bust or something. But for things like helmets, like for example, this Rocketeer helmet, you would want to use something called slush casting.
Or rotocasting, a lot of people do this, like whether it's Vulpin Props or Steve Meisner, like they cast their helmets the same way. You put in little batches of material and you roll it around by hand. Or there's also machines that you could do it, like when we did that animatronic skull project, those skulls are made, they're rotocast. So he's got a mold that's on a jig on a machine, pours the material in, closes it up, and then turns the machine on and it rolls it.
All 3 degrees, 6 axes, you get all the amount of coverage. And the principle behind rotocasting or slush casting is that you're just coating the inside of the mold evenly with your material, and then you get a layer, which means you don't have to haul it out. You save materials. Makes total sense for helmets. Saves weight.
But it also saves shrinkage. When you have a resin, if you pour a solid block of resin, it's going to shrink a lot. But if you rotocast in these layers and make it thin, you're going to get a lot less shrinkage.
All right, well, we have the mold for this Rocketeer helmet, and we're going to get a demonstration of rotocasting a helmet like this. So we can work on it for a future project.
Yes.
So what's step 1?
Well, the obvious step is to have the mold.
Yes.
I have this as an open mold, and I designed it so that there's a little bit of a lip right along this edge, so as I'm rolling it, it doesn't just pour straight out. It's got a little bit of a return there, so it kind of grabs the material. In doing this helmet before, I kind of found a good batch size, and the batch size is really important when you're rotocasting. Like you might think, oh, just mix up a bunch and roll it around in there, but the material starts to harden up and it'll like slump or it'll collect in places. So I end up doing it in like 5 or 6 small batches.
You're coating the inside.
Yeah, but you got to do those 5 or 6 small batches consecutively. You can't wait like an hour and then go do the next one. So you have to just do one, let it gel up, and then do the next one. And you just do 5 or so layers, and it takes about a half an hour to make one of these helmets.
Is that first layer the most important and the one that you'd be most precise with to avoid any bubbles?
This doesn't have a whole lot of nooks and crannies that catch bubbles. Some more complicated pieces that I've done do. So you have to you hit some air in there to kind of pop bubbles, or if you powder the inside of the mold, it'll help. Through capillary effect, bring the resin into those corners.
Okay.
But this one's a pretty easy mold to run.
And then do you make all that resin at once to pour in, or do you actually make the batches?
Bunch of batches. We'll do like 4 or 5 batches.
All right, let's get started.
Cool.
All right, Frank, so the first batch is in there and you mix it up. What type of resin are you using today?
I'm using Smoothcast Onyx Fast. The work time on the resin is also important. You don't want to sit here spinning for like a half an hour or something. You want
for each layer?
Yeah, you want a work time that's manageable. And Onyx Fast and 65D are 2 of the resins from Smooth On that are kind of easiest to rotocast for this kind of stuff.
And you're going for coverage, but also even distribution of the resin. Just because you're looking inside and the mold is pink, the pink silicone, and just because you get all black with the Onyx doesn't mean it's even. It could still pull up.
Yes.
So you want to have it even. And you know you're going to have the fin for the helmet, so you want to cover that.
Yeah, you got to kind of keep it moving, and then at a point it's going to kind of get slower. It'll start kind of collecting and pooling, and you have to like find this magical like happy medium spot that it just kind of stops. And you got to know where you're gonna stop too. Like I know that this fin takes a bunch to fill up, so now that I have like the first layer more or less in, I'm I'm just gonna let it pool in the fin. So it's just gonna have to fill up.
All right. Any techniques you use to make sure you get coverage? You're not a 3-axis jig?
No, I mean, it's using your eye and getting the feel for it. Like, I think I did like 2 of these before I really got it down, like as far as how much resin to put in and how many layers to do. The first one was a little uneven. Second one was a little bit better and had like a little bit of a swirl. And then by the time I got to like the third one, it was like glass smooth in there. And
if you have a mold that isn't an open mold, that's closed completely, can you still rotocast?
Yeah, you can. You can't really see what's in there, so you have to kind of guess. I did work last year for Pop Culture Shock Toys. They did the Battle Cat.
Yeah.
And I rotocast that whole body in a closed mold, and I just had a eyeball that it would be good enough. I had a little port in the belly or something like that. I would pull it out.
Pour it in your batches?
Pour it in, and then just sit there and roll it for 5-10 minutes, and I'd set a timer and just keep moving it.
Wow. Did you have that in the first try, or did you have to do it again?
I had to do 2 of them, and I got them both on the first try.
Awesome.
So it becomes experience at that point. You know, I've done these a bunch of times, so a little bit of it is feel.
All right, on to the second batch. Frank, you're spilling all the resin.
Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure to get that ridge around the bottom side.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's okay to waste a little bit. I've been decreasing the batches slowly. I started out with about 8-ounce batches, and now I'm down to 5-ounce batches, like 4 or 5-ounce batches.
So over time, you don't need to coat as much?
Well, now that the fin's filled, I only need a little bit. I need less resin so that I'm just creating a layer on everything.
All right, and then one more batch or so?
Yeah, I'm gonna do one more batch, and then that'll be it, and then we'll let it sit for, I don't know, maybe half an hour or so, and then open it.
And then demolding. So Frank, for each of the batches, can you do something different for each layer?
Yeah, like if you use like a translucent resin and you put different color pigments in it, and you can get some cool swirly effects or some like translucency if you were making like an alien or a monster or a frog or something like that.
Or imagine if you were using a translucent resin and you wanted to make sure you got full coverage on each batch, each layer, you could then tint it.
Yeah, I suppose you could. A lot of times when we do brush up silicone molds, we'll pigment each batch different so we can see the proper coverage. So yeah, if you want to practice, I don't see why not.
And on a mold of this size, is it important to put any demolding agents on the mold?
Typically, I would say yes, use like Ease Release 200 or 300 or anything like that. I didn't use anything on this because I'm not really worried about this mold burning out. At this point, if it starts drying out and cracking, then I don't have to run any more Rocketeer helmets.
Is it done?
Boom, it's done.
Boom. How do you know when it's done?
One of the things that I do is I keep all these cups around.
Okay.
So that when you can kind of check it, and when this thin film on the edge is all set up and it's not sticky or doesn't stick to itself, then you know that batch is done. And with these cups, I try and reuse them. So I just pull this out, chuck that in the garbage, and then I have stacks of these that are more or less clean. Like when you're just mixing some resins or mixing things, I can reuse these cups.
Right, and you're taking the cup that you used for the last batch. That was the last one we did, so if that's all set up, it's gonna be all set up in there?
All those are set up, so I'll just open the mold.
All right. So you're taking off the fiberglass?
Yeah, a lot of times when I design these matrix molds, I design it so that the shell will come off and the rubber can stay on.
And then any special process to take off the rubber?
Slowly. You don't want to yank it; it might rip. You can just throw that on the ground.
Woo! And there it is. All that extra flesh, take that off. Now it's a testament to the mold how clean this is, but just looking at it,
there's not a whole lot of seam. There's a little bit of a file that you have to clean up this front surface, and it's kind of an even area. There's not a lot of curves, so it's real easy to just clean up with a file. And then there's almost nothing on the fin.
So what do you do to inspect it? You just take a look at it and
yeah,
look
it's
around
just
for
visual.
bubbles?
Yeah, I don't really. There's like I said, this is a pretty smooth, casting. So there's not a lot of places for like bubbles to form. Then you feel the thickness of the casting. Make sure that that's good enough. You could roll a little bit more in here if you wanted to. Not now because it's been too long. After about an hour or so, you don't want to add more urethane in there because it just won't stick well. I guess in worst case scenario, you could kind of Dremel it inside to rough up the surface and then maybe tap some epoxy or fiberglass in there. But this is a plenty thick.
And if you're making a helmet and you have like an uneven distribution of the resin on the inside, what can you do to hollow any of that out to make more room?
It's tricky. I got a little bit of pooling in the top forehead here just because I was rushing one of the layers. I guess you could grind it out, but this isn't bad enough that it's going to be a huge problem. And this also isn't that complicated of a process that you can't go run another one. I mean, this was only 6 batches of resin of like 5 or 8 ounces a piece. So it's not that much resin.
And that's one of the advantages of rotocasting.
Yeah.
Is that you're not using a ton of material. As long as you take time, have the patience, you can pop that out, and then we'll be finishing this helmet in a future video, but hopefully that gives you some explanation of how you do rotocasting, basic rotocasting.
Easy stuff.
Thanks a lot, Frank.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll have more projects with Frank from his shop in the future. Until then, I'm Norm.
I'm Frank.
See you next time.